23-year-old Arizona man Christopher Todd Eric died following a mental health crisis and was mistakenly recorded as unclaimed due to a clerical error, according to his family's allegations. Years later, his mother said she recognized his preserved body inside a public anatomical exhibit where it had been plastinated and displayed without her knowledge or consent. She's since pursued legal action seeking to recover his remains and challenge how unclaimed bodies are processed, sparking debate over consent, medical displays, and the ethical handling of human remains. A Connecticut man survived a horrific workplace accident after his arm became trapped inside an industrial furnace for 3 days. As circulation failed and tissue began to decay, he reportedly tried to amputate his own arm using a saw blade after noticing the smell of rotting flesh, but he lost consciousness from pain before he was able to finish. Concerned when he failed to show up for work, a friend contacted authorities, and rescuers eventually freed him, preventing a more than likely fatal outcome. Eminem was stalked by the same man who broke into his properties 3 times over 6 years, repeatedly reaching him despite arrests and court orders. In 2019, the stalker broke into one of Eminem's former homes and told the new homeowner he was looking for his brother Marshall. In 2020, he escalated by entering Eminem's actual residence through an unlocked entry point while Eminem was asleep, later telling police he was there to kill him. After being arrested and convicted, the man returned again in 2024, once more breaching Eminem's property. Court records show the break-ins weren't the result of sophisticated planning, but repeated exploitation of access points and timing, highlighting how even high-level security measures can fail against persistent obsession. Eminem was unharmed, but prosecutors described the pattern as escalating and dangerous. A mummified carrier pigeon found inside a UK chimney in 1982 was carrying an encrypted World War II message from 1944 that's never been decoded. The pigeon likely died mid-mission during Britain's wartime communications and remained sealed in the chimney for nearly 40 years. Attached to its leg was a capsule holding a coded strip of letters and numbers believed to be connected to D-Day operations. Despite repeated attempts by historians and codebreakers, the message's meaning and destination remain unknown. Britain's intelligence agency GCHQ has confirmed the cipher is still unsolved and publicly asked for help deciphering it, leaving whatever information the pigeon was carrying permanently undelivered. Here's some insanely rare footage of a siphonophore, a deep-sea colony that looks more like an alien or sea creature than anything from Earth. Even though they appear to be a single creature, they're actually colonies made up of thousands of tiny bodies called zooids, each assigned a specific role like feeding, reproduction, or movement. Some species can grow longer than a blue whale, trailing glowing tentacles through the dark to sting and capture prey. Because they're extremely delicate and live thousands of feet below the surface, clear footage of siphonophores in their natural environment is rarely captured. Here's some footage of the only volcano in the world famous for its blue lava, Indonesia's Kawah Ijen. What you're seeing isn't actually blue molten rock, but sulfuric gas is igniting as they escape the crater, creating electric blue flames that can flow down the slope like liquid fire at night. The effect is only visible in darkness, which is why most clips are filmed after sunset. Miners still descend into the crater through toxic fumes to collect sulfur, working inside one of the most extreme volcanic environments on Earth. Acclaimed filmmaker and actor Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner have been found dead in their Brentwood, Los Angeles home in what investigators are investigating as an apparent homicide. Emergency responders discovered the couple inside the residence during a medical aid call when their daughter Romy reportedly found them dead with their throats slit. Their 32-year-old son Nick Reiner was taken into custody and held on $4 million bail in connection with the deaths, though police have not publicly released a confirmed motive. Nick has a well-documented history of long-term drug addiction and periods of homelessness, first entering rehab around age 15 and struggling for years before finally getting clean. He later worked with his father on the 2015 film Being Charlie, which drew on his experiences with addiction and recovery. Rob Reiner was one of Hollywood's most recognizable directors and actors, known for films such as Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men. His death alongside his wife's has sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry as authorities continue their investigation. MF Doom, the masked supervillain of hip-hop, died in a way just as mysterious as the persona he created. On Halloween Day in 2020, he passed away at 49, but his death was kept completely secret for 62 days. For 2 months, fans continued listening to his music and waiting for new projects, unaware that he was already gone. Then on New Year's Eve, his wife quietly announced his passing, but gave no cause of death or any further details. To this day, the circumstances remain undisclosed, sparking endless speculation. It felt strangely fitting. Doom built his entire identity around mystery and anonymity, sometimes even sending imposters to perform in his place. In the end, he died on Halloween, vanished in silence, and left behind one final mystery. In 1929, 6-year-old Carl Newton Mahan became the youngest person in American history to be charged with murder, then sat in a courtroom playing with a doll. The Kentucky boy had gotten into a fight with an 8-year-old named Cecil Van Hoos over a piece of scrap metal. Cecil reportedly slapped him, so Carl ran home, grabbed his father's shotgun, and blasted the older boy, killing him instantly. Because of the shocking nature of the crime, Carl was actually put on trial for murder, sitting in the courtroom so young that they had to give him toys to keep him calm. The jury found him guilty of manslaughter and sentenced him to 15 years in reform school, but the conviction was quickly overturned due to public outrage. This was the moment a military wife was caught on camera trying to poison her husband. In 2023 in Tucson, Arizona, Melody Feliciano Johnson repeatedly poured bleach into the coffee maker of her U.S. Air Force husband during a bitter divorce. When his coffee began tasting strange and making him feel nauseous, he first assumed the machine had mold before testing it with pool strips, which showed dangerously high levels of chlorine. Suspecting he was being poisoned, he set up hidden cameras in their kitchen, which later recorded his wife adding bleach to the coffee reservoir. Although he avoided serious injury or death by pretending to drink the coffee, investigators said he believed she was trying to kill him to collect his life insurance benefits. She later took a plea deal and was sentenced to probation, mental health treatment, and a no-contact order. These are the graves believed to belong to the 63 wives of Indian General Afzal Khan dating back to 1659. Historical accounts suggest an astrologer predicted the general would die in his next battle, and fearing that his wives would remarry after his death, he ordered all 63 of them to be executed before leaving for war. Soon afterward, Khan was killed in battle just as the prophecy foretold. Today, the cemetery still stands in Afzalpura, India, a site tied to one of the darkest stories associated with honor, power, and possession in Indian history. In April of 2023, 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis was riding with friends through rural upstate New York when their GPS led them into the wrong driveway. Realizing their mistake, they immediately began turning around to leave, but homeowner Kevin Monahan quickly emerged with a shotgun. Without a word, he fired 2 blasts into the vehicle as it rolled away, one round striking Kaylin in the neck. Her friends frantically drove miles searching for cell service, but by the time they reached any help, she was dead. At trial, prosecutors described how Monahan showed no remorse, even claiming he had done nothing wrong. The next year, a jury convicted him of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life, leaving Kaylin's family haunted by the fact that a single wrong turn ended in their daughter's execution-style death. In March of 2023, Peruvian police discovered an 800-year-old mummy hidden in a food delivery bag. Its keeper, 26-year-old Julio Cesar Bermejo, claimed the remains were his spiritual girlfriend named Juanita and that she'd been in his family for generations. But experts revealed the preserved body was actually a man who died around age 45. The mummy was seized by Peru's Ministry of Culture for protection, while Bermejo was detained as authorities investigated how he came to treat a centuries-old corpse as his lover. This is one of the rarest events in nature a human can lay their eyes on, an atmospheric phenomenon known as a sun candle or light pillar forming at full intensity. The column forms when sunlight reflects off of flat ice crystals suspended in calm, freezing air, stacking the light into a heavenly beam stretching to the ground. Conditions have to be absolutely perfect, and most sun candles are often faint or brief. This one is unusually bright, tall, and sharply defined, making it a once-in-a-lifetime sight for skiers and snowboarders. This video shows one of the rarest congenital conditions ever documented in dogs, short spine syndrome. The disorder occurs when the spine fails to fully develop before birth, causing the body to appear unusually compressed while the legs remain close to normal length. Affected dogs often have little to no visible neck and a shortened, rigid back, though many can still walk and function completely normally. Fewer than a handful of confirmed cases have been documented worldwide, making it so rare that most veterinarians will never encounter one in their entire careers. Here's some extremely rare footage of a giant squid feeding on a much smaller squid. For centuries, giant squid were dismissed as pure myth, nothing more than sailor legends like the Kraken. Their existence wasn't even scientifically accepted until 1857, and humans didn't film one alive in the deep sea until 2012. Even today, they remain among the least observed large animals on Earth. They live thousands of feet below the surface in near total darkness, and almost no one in history has ever seen one actively hunting, let alone captured it on video. Here's an extremely rare compilation of wild animals shedding their antlers. Antlers are one of the fastest growing bones in the animal kingdom, and unlike horns, they're designed to fall off and regrow every year. While antlers are growing, they're covered in a soft, blood-rich skin called velvet that supplies oxygen and nutrients to the developing bone. Once the antlers reach full size, rising testosterone levels cut off that blood supply, the velvet dies, and the animal rubs it off against trees and brush to expose the hardened bone beneath. After mating season ends, hormone levels drop again, the bone weakens at the base, and the entire antler eventually detaches and breaks away. This cycle allows deer, elk, and moose to grow a completely new set of antlers each year, often larger than the last. Comedy legend Artie Lang survived one of the most self-destructive spirals in modern celebrity. In January of 2010, after years of severe heroin addiction, he stabbed himself multiple times in the abdomen inside his Hoboken apartment, collapsing from internal bleeding and barely surviving emergency surgery. His addiction later led to overdoses, constant arrests, homelessness, and the collapse of his nasal septum as a result of long-term cocaine abuse, permanently disfiguring his face. Thankfully, in recent years, Lang has said he's sober, lives mostly out of the spotlight, and prioritizes stability and health over returning to fame. In 2007, Shelley Miscavige, the wife of Scientology leader David Miscavige, and once one of the organization's most powerful figures, attended her father's funeral and then completely vanished from public view. She's not been seen, photographed, or heard from publicly ever since. In 2013, actress and Scientology defector Leah Remini filed a missing persons report, prompting the LAPD to state they had located Shelley and confirmed she was alive and safe, though no evidence, images, or details were released, and no independent verification has ever occurred. Former Scientology members allege she was removed from leadership and confined to a secret church facility due to internal conflicts with David, claims which the organization vehemently denies, leaving her disappearance unresolved nearly 2 decades later. Here's a photo of 2 tourists posing inside the Claw of Death at Chernobyl, a massive crane used to scoop up chunks of radioactive reactor core after the 1986 meltdown. The machine is still so contaminated that standing near it can deliver radiation doses dozens of times higher than a chest X-ray, and its rusted frame is coated in radioactive dust that can cling to hair, skin, or clothing. While a brief picture likely won't cause immediate sickness, the exposure adds to long-term cancer risk, and any contamination they brought home could be far deadlier. It remains one of the most dangerously toxic relics of the exclusion zone, yet people still climb inside it for a photo op. In 2000, a Tahitian man named Fidel Maruhi pulled off one of the most unlikely survivals in aviation history. He stowed away in the wheel well of a Boeing 747 bound for Los Angeles. For 7.5 hours, he endured sub-zero temperatures and near total lack of oxygen, and when rescuers found him, his core body temperature was just 79 degrees Fahrenheit, a level usually considered fatal. But against all odds, he lived, and when asked why he'd risk such a death-defying stunt, he explained his dream was to reach France simply so he could shake hands with soccer legend Zinedine Zidane. In 2023, 6 Mississippi cops who called themselves the Goon Squad stormed into a home without a warrant after a neighbor complained about 2 black men staying with a white woman. What followed was hours of torture straight out of a nightmare. The officers tased the men, forced them to strip, and poured milk, alcohol, and chocolate syrup over their bodies while taunting them with racial slurs. They made them crawl on the floor, threatened to sexually assault them, and even forced them to shower together at gunpoint. The ordeal finally ended after one officer shoved a gun into Michael Jenkins' mouth and pulled the trigger, shattering his jaw but somehow not killing him. To cover it up, the squad planted drugs and filed false reports, but the truth eventually came out and all 6 were sentenced to decades in prison. 17-year-old Louisiana girl Caitlin Strait was 28 weeks pregnant when a road rage incident suddenly ended her life. She was shot in the head, declared brain dead, and doctors had to perform an emergency C-section to save her baby. She and her friends were simply driving when another vehicle pulled up and opened fire. Even worse, police said they had no idea why the shooter even targeted them. There was no crash, no argument, no warning. The teen was rushed to the hospital, but her injuries were irreversible, and she was kept alive just long enough to deliver her premature baby. To this day, the killer has never been found, and the motive remains a mystery. Rising music star David might be a murderer. On September 8, 2025, workers at a Hollywood tow yard noticed a foul odor coming from a 2023 Tesla registered to singer David Anthony Burke, aka David, the 20-year-old artist behind viral hits like Romantic Homicide and Feel It. The car had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills after it was impounded days earlier, but when police opened it around noon, they discovered a decomposed body wrapped wrapped in plastic and stuffed into the front trunk. The remains were so badly decayed that identification wasn't possible on the spot, as the LAPD quickly handed the case over to homicide detectives and the county coroner. At the time of the discovery, David was actively on his Withered World Tour, posting on social media and preparing for upcoming shows, making it unclear whether he had any connection to the car's contents. Authorities have not released the victim's identity and emphasize that it's unknown if David himself is involved in the case, which remains an active homicide investigation. Has anyone else been following what's going on in Nepal right now? What is going on in Nepal right now? Here's a little breakdown. Earlier this month, Nepal plunged into chaos after the government tried to ban social media, sparking mass protests led mostly by young Gen Zers. The unrest quickly turned violent. Parliament was set on fire. The Prime Minister's residence was attacked and his wife was killed. Protesters dragged the finance minister into the street, stripped him of his clothes, and nearly beat him to death, while mobs torched luxury symbols of the elite, including the five-star Hilton Kathmandu, which had to be evacuated as flames consumed the entire building. Banks, police stations, and other government offices were also ransacked. Amid this anarchy, activists organized online, using Discord servers to coordinate and even hold symbolic votes for a new leader. Thousands chose former Chief Justice Sushila Karki, known for her role in past democratic upheavals. On September 12, 2025, under mounting pressure from protesters and the military, the president officially installed her as interim prime minister, with elections now scheduled for March 2026. In 2015, brothers Robert and Michael Bever turned their quiet Oklahoma home into a slaughterhouse. Armed with knives and body armor, the teens butchered their parents and 3 siblings in a planned midnight massacre, leaving only 2 sisters alive, one gravely wounded, the other just 2 years old and deliberately spared. Investigators later revealed the brothers weren't driven by family conflict, but by a twisted obsession with mass murder. They idolized the Columbine shooters, stockpiled weapons, and even kept journals outlining a plan to kill hundreds more once their family was out of the way, dreaming of becoming legends of infamy. The carnage only ended when the injured sister managed to call 911, bringing police to a scene so gruesome it was described as the stuff of nightmares. A couple years later, Robert was sentenced to life without parole, while Michael received life with a chance of parole after 38 years. In 1992, 16-year-old Suzanne Capper was lured to a house in Manchester by people she thought were her friends. But for nearly a week, they tortured and humiliated her, breaking her arm, pulling out her teeth, shaving her head, and scrubbing her skin off with a wire brush before forcing her into a bathtub of disinfectant. They blasted tapes of the movie Child's Play to torment her, then drove her to a field, doused her in gasoline, and set her on fire. Suzanne survived for long enough to name her attackers before dying in the hospital 4 days later. 6 people were convicted for the heinous crimes. 4 received life sentences, including 2 women who were just 17 and 18 at the time, while the 2 remaining men were given lengthy prison terms. Danny Masterson, best known for playing Stephen Hyde on That 70s Show, lived a double life that ended in one of Hollywood's darkest scandals. In 2023, he was convicted of raping 2 women in the early 2000s, crimes he had long denied, while reportedly using his fame and influence in the Church of Scientology to silence his victims. The women testified that the church pressured them not to report him and even tried to discredit them when they did. Masterson was ultimately sentenced to 30 years to life in prison, a staggering downfall for a sitcom star once seen as a laid-back cultural icon. In 2025, 6-year-old Gunnar Hyatt of Mount Carmel, Illinois, died just days after his birthday when he suffocated from inhaling helium out of a Mylar balloon. Investigators say the cause was consistent with helium inhalation, a danger many parents don't realize can kill within minutes by displacing oxygen and cutting off blood flow to the brain. The Wabash County coroner used the tragedy to warn that oversized helium balloons, often seen as harmless party decorations, can become deadly when inhaled, a reminder of how quickly something festive can turn fatal.